I've got a question about sexuality.
Yes.
In particular, yesterday you mentioned several times that men have a penis and women have a vagina, and God would want us to use those organs sexually.
Yeah.
And when I was reflecting on that discussion afterwards, it felt as if the implication was that homosexuality is not in line with spirituality or God's wishes. So I guess my first question is it? And then the second question that follows that is, you've mentioned the word flaws several times. In God's eyes, is homosexuality a flaw in some people?
Okay. Firstly, to answer the question, we must understand the soul. And if we understand the soul, we will see that actually all souls that God has created all separate into the two halves when they incarnate. Right? Now, each soul, before separation, has a percentage of masculinity and a percentage of femininity that is unique to itself. So if we drew one type of soul, like that, we could say some souls have more an even split of masculinity versus femininity. And other souls have a much stronger split of masculinity and femininity. And other souls have a much stronger femininity than masculinity.
So that's inherent in their personality.
Inherent in their in the collective soul condition as a part of the personality of the soul itself. Now, these souls split in half when they incarnate. So you imagine a soul that has more masculinity in it in terms of percentage. When it incarnates, it splits in half. So can you see it's going to have a little bit of femininity in each half and dominantly masculinity in both halves. Does that make sense? In this case here, this soul will have, when it splits in half, it'll have dominant femininity in both halves and a little bit of masculinity in each half. This soul, when it splits in half, one half is going to be dominantly feminine and the other half will be dominantly masculine. Now, it's the dominant sexual characteristic of the half of the soul that attracts the body that it enters. So in other words, when this soul splits, it'll attract a male body on one half and a female body on the other. When this part of the soul splits, it'll attract a male body on one half and a male body on the other. When this part of the soul splits, it'll attract a female body on one half and a female on the other, because of that being the dominant of each half of the soul. That being the case, homosexuality, as we call it, we really need to rename it in a way to be called, because this is the real point, what is the soul sexuality? The sexuality of each individual half of the soul. And in this case, you could say that it's heterosexual, where one half is female, the other half is male. In this case, you could say it's homosexual. One half is male and the other half is male. And in this case, one half is female and the other half female, so therefore homosexual in nature. So you could say it's not necessarily, I wouldn't call sexuality like, is a person homosexual, bisexual, or heterosexual. I'm only interested in one thing, and that is, what is the other half of the soul's attraction and what is the dominant characteristic in terms of masculinity and
gender.
Femininity inside of each part of the soul, because that's what determines the gender of the body. Yes. That being the case, you could say God has created homosexuality. That being the case, it can't be a flaw. And therefore, I feel that any religion that portrays homosexuality as a flaw does not understand the creation of the soul. Yep. Does that make sense? Yep.
Isn't it also true, though, when we have a pure state, a uninjured sexuality within us, the only sexual attraction we have is for our soulmate. Exactly. So it won't be for many men. For me, it would be just for this one man. And if I was homosexual, it wouldn't be for many women, it would just be for the woman who is my soulmate.
So you understand what Mary's saying there? Sort of like, when my soul splits, so here's my soul before it split, when it incarnates, it splits. So when my soul splits, if I am in a pure state, the only person that I'll be attracted to from a sexual perspective anywhere in the universe is the other half of my soul. That's the only person I'll be attracted to. So if I find myself attracted to many people, so if Mary found herself attracted to many men, or I found myself attracted to many women sexually, then I'm yet to purify my connection with my own soul. Because once I purify my connection with my own soul, I will actually find only one person turns me on, and it will be the other half of my soul. That would be the only person that will turn me on. Does that make sense? Yep. Yep.
Just on that point, I wasn't here yesterday, so I'm sorry if you covered it yesterday.
That's okay.
But you mentioned the splitting and you mentioned the splitting and the carnation of the soul.
Yep.
Can you explain that? I'm sorry.
Sure. It's a part of this discussion, really. So there's three types of souls that I've drawn there, which are who's got the dominant characteristics. So it doesn't matter as to which type. So let's say I draw a soul in this case where it's got a dominant masculine trait and a smaller feminine, and when it splits in such a way that the masculine part is more dominant in both sides. What will happen when I say it splits, when a couple get together, have sex, and they produce a body for the soul to incarnate into, what happens is the soul itself splits into two halves, and each half attracts the body. Two bodies, actually, and there are two bodies created at the moment of conception. And in the case of this one that I'm drawing now, both of these halves will be male bodies. Because masculinity is more dominant in the entire soul before it's split. Now, in this state, it doesn't know itself. It doesn't know anything about its life. It doesn't know who it is. It just incarnates. And as soon as it incarnates, it starts experiencing. And as soon as it starts experiencing, it starts discovering itself. And that's part of the process that God created for us to come to discover ourselves completely. And ourselves is not just our half. We also need to come to discover the other half of ourselves. And that's that process where the soul now envelops the two bodies that the parents have created for it. That process is the process I call incarnation.
Just what are the two bodies, babe?
The two bodies being a physical body and the spirit body. Does that make sense? So you have two bodies. You've got a physical body and a spirit body, and your half of the soul is connected to both of those bodies. Your soulmate, what is your dominant sexual attraction? Male or female?
Male.
Male. So your soulmate is male, right? And he will have two bodies. He's got a spirit body and a physical body, and his half of the soul is connected to those two bodies. And eventually, once you work through the different emotional injuries that cause you to be separate, you will eventually draw each other into each other's lives, and you will eventually connect. And then, as you grow, you will eventually become completely connected for the rest of your existence. And you will not be involved sexually with any other person, because no other sexual relationship will satisfy you, in fact. Yep. Yeah. Does that make sense? Yeah, it does. Yep, yep. Very, very clear, I think, understanding of how incarnation occurs as well.